Rob Stafsholt is my guest today, Monday, July 20, 2020. I'm Ben Dryden. You're watching DrydenWire Live. Lots to get to with my guest today, Rob Stafsholt. Rob was first elected as Wisconsin's 29th Assembly District Representative in 2016 and again in 2018. He is also a 10th Senate District candidate running as a Republican and is on the ballot in the August primary, along with Republican opponent Cherie Link. The winner, of course, will be challenging incumbent Democrat Senator Patty Shockner in the November general election. I think I got all that right. All right. Well, let's get right to it. Let's get him on here. Please help me welcome in for the very first time Representative Rob Stafsholt. Rob, good morning, buddy. How are you?
I'm great, Ben. How are you? Thanks for having me on. We've been in the making for a little while here.
Yeah, we've been talking about it, and I think right before COVID, I think we may even had something scheduled for you to come in, and then it was like, okay, let's just stop all of our in-person ones for right now. I think Tom Tiffany was the last one on. It was like the day before the Safer at Home, and so thank you for joining me remotely. One of these days, of course, this will be over, and we'll be able to have you back in. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So first time being a guest here. So we always like to kind of for the first time before we get into your time in the assembly, your candidacy for the 10th Senate District, some of your views and opinions. Tell us a little bit about you, pre-politics. Where'd you grow up? What'd you do? What was your life before politics?
Sure. I think it's important to realize that I never really saw the trajectory going to politics. I grew up between New Richmond and Hammond. New Richmond address, went to high school in New Richmond, Wisconsin. My dad and I farm here. We still farm here. I kind of grew up on a crop farm out in Erin Prairie Township, if anybody knows where that is, and probably not too many people do. Went on and went to college in Eau Claire and then to River Falls for a while. Grew up, my dad worked in the Twin Cities at a large corporation that eventually got bought out by a bigger corporation, and he found himself with not a whole lot to do every day. So our family decided to buy a salad dressing manufacturing company called Scoop's Delight Salad Dressing up in Prairie Farm. I kind of slowly took that company over and built it up to the point where it was big enough I needed to buy all new machinery, and ended up running into somebody that bought me out. So kind of left that world and didn't have a lot to do every day, and tried to find my way, with technology and in farming these days. When you're raising crops in the middle of summer, there's often not as much to do as there used to be. When I was a kid, we used to walk around hand picking velvet leaf, and now we don't do that anymore. Yeah. So I kind of got into the mortgage world. As a young person, I was self-employed my whole life, and as many people probably know, sometimes getting a mortgage for someone that doesn't have a W-2 can be tough. So I ran into a good friend of mine that was in that field, and long story short, I got a mortgage and ended up. I knew quite a bit about financing to begin with. When I was younger, my mom actually got sick and passed away, and it was just Dad and I. So I handled a lot of the financial stuff and input cost loans for our farm. And so I just kind of had a background in that. It kind of came naturally to me. So I ended up being a mortgage broker. Did that for 7 or 8 years. Ran into some of the great realtors we have in our area who all thought I should buy some rental property. So I got into that field as well, and just kind of built that up. And in the housing downturn in 2008, 9, somewhere in there, they kind of changed the rules on self-employed loans. So a lot of the products that I was really good at, they weren't available anymore. Sure. So I kind of went into doing some other things and slowly got towards politics. Had been involved on the township level. We had some property rights issues back when I was a young guy. Our township signed up for ag exclusive zoning, and was supposed to be a 20-year stint. And when the 20 years was up, they didn't let us out. So started actually working on property rights first years ago, and was going to Madison and going to committee hearings and working on bills, and have been a lifelong advocate for sporting, hunting, fishing, trapping. It's kind of a way of life in my family. So some of the folks that I knew in those fields figured out that I knew where Madison was, and that I wasn't scared to get up in front of a committee and talk. So started doing some things, advocating for sportsmen's rights and things along those lines. And it just kind of slowly, the sidewalk led towards, in 2016, running for the state assembly and getting elected and taking office in January 2017.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, if you're already making the trips down to Madison, might as well get paid for it.
right, yeah,
I mean, just
uh,
saying. So,
yeah.
how was that presented to you? Was it your idea to run for assembly? Was it someone else's? And how long was that process?
Made a, I'd actually made a run in 2006. At that time, Representative Andy Lamb was in, and Andy decided not to rerun, and kind of later in the decision process than I think people expected. So, folks in Madison, Kitty Rhodes is a state rep from Hudson. They all kind of went out and started looking for people to take that spot. Some of the people I'd been working with approached me, and I kind of said yes, but I said yes almost within a day or two of when a gentleman named John Murtha did. John Murtha is a great guy from our area here. Has played in a band and knew a ton of people, and he beat me in that primary in 2006, and I just kind of put all that stuff on afterburners, and then in 2016, John called and said, I don't know if you're still interested or what you're doing these days, but 10 years is enough for me. I'm going to get back to spending some time with my family and helping run my small business.
Nice.
So that's kind of how that started in 2016.
And then you won re-election in 2018.
Yep.
And there was on your I went to your Stafsholt for Senate website this morning, and in your bio you had stated that during your time representing the 29th Assembly District, you have been a leader on many issues facing Northwest Wisconsin. What are some of those issues over the last almost 4 years now that you've been leading?
Sure. I think as someone that got into politics based on property rights issues, one of the first thing I did was I thought that sometimes government agencies would abuse their eminent domain policies.
What?
Yeah, it happens. And so there was a lot of projects going on in my district. And, so when you get into office as a freshman legislature, you jump in and you're all ready to go, and you soon find out that the very first thing you do is tackle this multi-billion-dollar budget and try to figure out where this money, and you're kind of drinking water out of a fire hose. So to try to effectively make big change for the first 6 months can be kind of tough. But I got in there and I put a law change in the budget, and Governor Walker supported that going through, that you couldn't use eminent domain for recreational trails. So in other words, the government would no longer be able to take your property without your approval for someone else's recreational opportunity. So I did that early on. I authored the youth mentored hunting bill in my first session, which made it so that parents and grandparents and guardians decided how old their kids needed to be when they could start hunting in a mentored situation, so arm's length from somebody. So we got that passed. Have done quite a few bills, and I worked on. So one of the things that I've always worked on is I think we need to get more people in the trades. I think in our society, people have slowly kind of moved away from the trades, and I think that's going to hurt us down the road. So worked on a bill for treating apprenticeship tuition much like college or technical college tuition as far as the tax credits they get. That bill didn't make it all the way through my first term. We worked on it again this term, and it's currently held up in the Senate. The Senate, again, the Assembly passed a bunch of bills onto those guys in the Senate, and we got ours through before COVID hit, and unfortunately, when COVID hit, they kind of shut things down. Yeah. So there's actually a lot of good bills by a lot of good people that are sitting in the Senate right now, hoping they can get in and get a vote on those, but I'm not sure if they will.
So that leads us to more recently, you decided to run for Senate in the 10th Senate. First of all, for people who don't know, what counties does that cover? Or part or whole or in part?
Sure. It covers part of Burnett County, most all of Polk County, St. Croix County, except for one township, just a little bit of Pierce County, and then a good chunk of Dunn County.
Okay. So what made you decide? First, when did you decide? Maybe not even decide. When did you first start getting it into your brain or in your head and start kicking around that maybe Senate? When was that?
It happened earlier than people think. I think I've had a really interesting seat. So in my first term, we had longtime Senator Sheila Harsdorf on the same side of the aisle as I was. And one of the things that I think is most critical for any elected official is to really battle for the things that are very specific to their district, right? I think we make statewide policy, and that kind of thing can still happen in a divided situation, but Sheila was there. I could pick up the phone if something was happening in Woodville, Wisconsin, and say, "Hey, Sheila, this is going on." And oftentimes she was aware of it already, and the two of us could work on that and go forward. And then Sheila got appointed to be the secretary of DATCAP and Department of Ag by Governor Walker. And when she left, we had this open Senate seat, and unfortunately, we lost that Senate seat from the Republican side in January of 2018.
Oh, that was Adam. Yes.
Yes.
I rib him all the time for it to this day. And thankfully, he's a good sport about it.
Open that up. Yeah, I thought I'd open that up and let you put a little on that if you wanted. I'm not sure if he's out of bed yet today where he's watching the show, but he'll probably catch it this afternoon. He's an attorney. But so, yeah, Patty Schachter won the seat. She's on the other side of the aisle and just has different priorities than I do and many people in my position do. So some of the very specific things that people needed in this district that were district specific has become increasingly harder to work on because of that. And I started thinking way back then as we were trying to work on some of those issues about maybe we need to make a change in the Senate. Of course, that relies on my assembly seat then staying in the same Republican power as it is. So there's a lot at stake. It took a lot of thinking. Sat down with my daughter at length and talked about how life would change and things would look different. She, of course, looked at me and said, "Well, that's been coming for a while, Dad. I don't know why you're asking me." But yeah, we made the decision and went forward. I announced back in November, which is a little early than I wanted to, but with a whole bunch of other things going on in the world, it was necessary for me to announce back in November. And then I kind of was quiet for a while. I decided to fulfill my duties as the state representative and do some of those things. And now that COVID was here and we got the Tom Tiffany election out of the way so that people were paying a little more attention to this coming fall, now we've been really ramping up here in the last few months and getting after it.
And now you have an interesting thing, and I'm sure a lot of people know, but some may not. You are the 29th Assembly District Representative. You are running for the 10th Senate District, but that means you can't hold your 29th Assembly seat. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that had to play in that decision-making process of, okay, I mean, I don't think people run for office expecting to lose. Okay, that's not true. There's some people, they get like less than 1% of the vote. It's white. Really? Anyway, most people aren't going to run expecting to lose. But you had to have that thought, that worst case scenario. It's, well, now, I mean, I love being in the Assembly. I think I can do more in the Senate. But you could be out of both.
Yep,
How did that process go? How did you kind of reconcile that?
Well, I think you're right. I think a lot of people don't realize that. As I'm talking to people knocking on doors, going down the street, I kind of get the, well, if it doesn't work out, we hope to keep you as our assembly person. And the fact of the matter is I had to sign a non-declaration of candidacy so that there's three guys on the Republican side and one on the Democrat side that are running for that assembly seat. And win, lose, or draw, I'm not going to have that assembly seat come November, or I'll come January, I guess. So that did weigh in.
It had to have.
I've won that seat 2 elections in a row, have been working hard there and had really a good rapport with people all the way from Menominee to Richmond and Hammond and both sides, and just have worked with a lot of really, really cool people, Ben. Honestly, I've met just a ton of people. It's really an amazing job because most days I learn something that I have no idea how else I would have met it. Like I would have been a part of that conversation in life otherwise.
Yeah.
And just, it's really neat. I'm a better person because of it, so I'm thankful for it. But you're right, to walk away from that and say, well, go big or go home.
Yeah.
We're for Senate. So it was a big decision, but we made it.
I know, and I honestly, I don't know how many people would take that risk. Or I don't know if risk is the right word, but I'm just going to use it for now because I can't think of the other word. Like in just their regular jobs. Like I'm going to go for this, not that necessarily assembly to a Senate is a promotion, but in a business world, going for promotion. And if I don't get it, well, I'm out of my other job too. I mean, it's just a huge, again, risk is the only word I can think of.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you on that.
I think that people in the everyday political circle, which is not always the best circle to be in, obviously, but people that do that, they talk about what a free swing is. And a free swing is something where you can keep your seat but run for another one, a special election. Those are free swings. And that's a lot easier for somebody to say, well, I'm going to swing for that. And if I lose, I didn't really lose that much, other than a lot of time and effort. But This is not a free swing, and that it's part of our process and our civil process to have these elections and people make decisions. And I'm hoping they agree with where I am on things. And
Yeah.
come next year, I get sworn into the state senate.
Yeah, like senators, there's 4 years, assemblies 2. So every other election cycle for the senators, they're middle of their 4-year term. They could run for something else. And if they don't get it, they still get to stay in there. But assembly, yeah, if you run for something, that's it, man. It's game, set, match. It's over if you don't get it. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the biggest issues you think that are facing the 10th Senate district right now? Obviously, you're in the 29th, so those are those issues. Do you see those issues in the other two? Because obviously there's 3 assembly districts in the Senate district. What are the biggest issues you feel are facing the 10th right now?
The 10th Senate District as a whole is a very unique Senate district. I think, and of course, everybody thinks theirs is the best one in the state. They're the most unique, but I really believe that. You've got Hudson and River Falls, where growing up over here in St. Croix County between New Richmond and Hammond, that's our county seat. That's where, for farm stuff, that's where the Fleet Farm is. So you got to know where the Fleet Farm is.
Yeah.
So I've spent a lot of time in Hudson and got to know people over there, but Hudson and River Falls aren't that far out of the Twin Cities. I mean, Woodbury's 8 miles across the border. So that's a whole different crowd than someone in Siren or Grantsburg in the northern part of the Senate district. What's important to them, maybe not from a family value standpoint, but economic standpoint or quality of life, those kind of things are different. And even in my assembly district, New Richmond's on the west end, which is my hometown. It's one of the fastest growing communities in the entire state of Wisconsin. You go 15 miles to the east of that, and you're in Emerald and Glenwood City, a much slower pace, and then on down to Dunn County and into Menominee. That's a lot different. It's just a lot different lifestyle, and it's a little bit different on what their issues are. So when you ask me what the issues are, it's kind of all over the board. But I'll tell you this, that typically in an election, we've got our 3 hard driving. These are our elevator speech points. But I think this election cycle is different because we have an immediate need to make sure that we get our economy back up and going, because it's not what it was. It's not even close. We need to get that back up and going, but we need to do it in a safe way. So we need to pay attention to our elderly and those people that are at risk so that they feel safe doing that. Otherwise, the economy won't get back up to full swing, and it's not fair to them either. So that's first and foremost. And then kind of tagging off of that from a state standpoint and a Senate district standpoint is we all go down there for the budget and we fight like hell for the dollars for our district. And I think across the board in a nonpartisan way, all of the elected officials on the state level in the northern half or the northwestern quarter of the state, we all have a common theme that we fight really hard to get our dollars back from the southeast part of the state. It's just based on population. So if you throw a few $1 million at a road project in the southeast corner of the state, you appease a lot more people. You appease a lot more elected officials. Where up here, geographically, we're spread out. Yep. So $1 million in Cameron, Wisconsin, probably helps Remain Quinn, and then he decides not to run. So, what do you do? But those are the kind of things that we all fight for to get back up here. And when we're talking about getting things back up and getting them open, and the estimates have been anywhere from $850 to $2 billion, but we're going to be down in tax revenues. And I know nobody likes to say about we need to get more tax revenues, but that's how our states run.
Yeah, it's kind of how it works.
That's how it works. So if we're going to be down $1 billion in tax revenues, we have to figure out 2 things: either how we're going to make that up or what we're going to cut. And there's going to be hard decisions that have to be made on where to spend the dollars we have, and we have to fight to get those back up here in northwestern Wisconsin and get our fair share.
Well, I'd be remiss to not bring up, I don't even know where to start. So I'm just going to, we got to talk about COVID-19, the opening, the safe at home, all that. I don't know what you want to talk about there, either the stuff that's already happened or where you think we should be going next, whether that's from your point of view or advantage point of an assembly representative or a candidate in the 10th, or just your personal feelings. What are your thoughts on COVID, the safer at home, getting our economy back up? How does this all work? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a huge issue. I think I try really hard not to be a conspiracy theory kind of guy, but it seems to me that the farther we go into this, scientifically, there's some question as to how concerned we need to be at this point. I try to measure things, and people are measuring all different numbers, and everybody, if you look at their numbers, they make sense. But when this first came around, it was kind of shocking. Out. We didn't know what to think. We didn't know that much about it, and I think it was justified to take a step back, say, "Whoa, what? How big a deal is this going to be? What do we need to do to protect ourselves and our loved ones?" And so we did that. We took a step back, and then, especially in northwestern Wisconsin, we didn't see the number of cases that they were in Milwaukee or other parts of the state. So to have a blanket policy across the whole state that was uniform, that didn't really pay attention to population density or population levels or the number of active cases, I think that we should have done more of that. I was part of a group of people that kind of put together for lack of a better term, a reopening plan, and I still believe in that plan. Of course, the court case made it so we didn't. It kind of nullified having the plan, so we didn't use it. But the thing I liked about it was it created a risk factor based on your area, what the population density was. If you were a business, it factored in what your risk level was for a business as far as human-to-human contact. It also was reactive, and I think that's the part that we're really missing in this conversation is we need to have something that's reactive. If the cases spike in Burnett County, then it needs to pull back, and the risk factors, those numbers are elevated. And it was reactive, and I like that. Now we're going forward, and it just seems like things are all over the board. One of the things that I really appreciate is there's a group called the Wisconsin Hospitals Association. It's the membership association for all the hospitals in the state, or at least most of them. And they put a dashboard out on their website that I watch closely, or I was watching closely anyway before. And the thing that I think is key is to watch how many hospitals you have in your area. And for this area, we have 26 in the region we're looking at, and what the total number of beds available are, and then how full the occupancy is. And I think that's what we should be looking at closer. I think people can flex numbers around. They say, we're having a lot more positive cases. Well, that's true, but we're also doing a lot more testing. So is it good, bad, or otherwise? And I guess we just need to figure out what metric we should all be looking at. And my concern is the people who are getting seriously sick and or hopefully not, but possibly dying. Let's look at where those cases are and track that, and past that, let's move forward with things.
Yeah, and there's that balance there of being safe, keeping everyone as best as possible safe, but also small businesses, certainly in our Northwest Wisconsin, it's just basically one big. It's a one big community made up of little smaller communities, but a lot of small businesses. I don't know about you, but I know several businesses that have didn't make it through. I guess this safer at home, which then led to obviously they could reopen, but by then it was kind of whatever. I don't know if you know any businesses that have kind of aren't there anymore. I guess.
Yeah,
but then
absolutely.
you have to still look at the greater cause here, and there's that balance. How do you find that balance? What do you tell a business owner that my business is struggling? I don't think I'm going to make it another month.
Sure.
But it's also, hey, we got to be smart because maybe right now in Polk the cases are going up. I know some of it kind of is. I think they're like the moderate to high risk now or something. Where's that balance? What do you tell people?
Yeah, I think here's what I tell people is I don't believe it's the government's job to decide what business, and they're picking winners and losers when they do that. I don't think it's the government's job to decide who should be open and who shouldn't. I think we should have guidelines, we should have recommendations. Those are all great. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit of self-accountability, right? If you're a person that has higher risk, my dad is 79 years old and has had a heart attack 8, 9, 10 years ago, and he's kind of a rough and tumble farm kind of guy, and I love him for that, but he's staying a little closer to home than he normally has for months. I think if you're the kind of person that thinks you're at risk but you want to go to town, that's your choice. I think that if you want to wear a mask, great, wear a mask, but don't mandate that a business has to do that. I think it comes to personal choice. If you're at risk, take a little accountability for that, and I think we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, sometimes we just don't. I used an analogy one time when you go to an intersection and it's lights, four-way stop with the green and red light, and you just see either not working or it's just flashing yellow, like there's something wrong, the power went out. You don't see a lot of accidents there. Right. Usually everybody's super cautious now. But when you see when it's normally working and there's a green light and turns yellow, then everyone's just booking it through the intersection, right? They speed up, so it's almost more dangerous. But a lot of times
Yep.
it's okay. I don't necessarily need to be told. I know what to do. It is
Yep.
frustrating to see people not doing anything. That's kind of stupid, right? But
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, do you think schools should reopen this fall? Like, in class?
I do. Everybody is most concerned with the elderly and the young and people's kids. I mean, that's just sacred ground. And
Yeah.
people do anything for the kids. I have a daughter, I do anything for her. But if you look at the numbers, the number of people under the age of 18 that are getting this and having any kind of serious complications are next to none. And I've talked to people that, unfortunately, it's the truth. In some of these kids' lives, the most stable thing they have is the 8 hours they're at school every day.
Yeah.
We hope we're going to work on that, but that's the truth of the matter. So to keep them at home longer, I'm concerned about the damage we're doing there. There's mental health components, not just in kids, but in adults too. I just heard a heartbreaking story from a gentleman on Friday. His son, because of COVID, his business got shut down, and so he wasn't working, and he wasn't getting through the unemployment stuff, or it wasn't cutting the mustard, and ended up taking his own life. And I heard the story, and I don't even know what to say to people like that. I mean, obviously my heart goes out to them, but the mental health part of things, there's a few of us talking about it, but that's another thing we need to address. At some point, it's a balance between overall health, and we need to weigh that out.
Yeah. You're not really sure how to segue out of that.
Yeah, right.
Wow. I mean, that's
Yeah,
horrible.
and it was at a meet and greet function, and he just laid it right out there, kind of matter of fact,
Oh.
and the whole room went quiet. My heart just went out to him, but he proved a good point, and that was what his intention was to make sure that we all were aware of. Please consider the mental health aspects and other things besides just this horrible disease. There are other health concerns
Yeah.
that we need to be aware of, and measuring the levels of those as well. It's not factual, so don't hold me to this, but someone told me the other day that the suicide rate in Wisconsin had gone up 800%. That seems like a huge number to me. I haven't verified that yet, but if that's true,
Well, if it's gone up at all, I mean, that's whether it's 8% or 800%. And I'm
right.
glad you brought that up because, to be perfectly honest, I don't think at any point I've really considered that, the mental health aspect. And I'm a little embarrassed for not even thinking of that before.
Yeah, one of the things we've been doing, and this is kind of a hit and miss deal too. So we're campaigning, and traditionally you grab your flyers and you walk down the street and knock on doors, and we really held off on that for a long time, as long as we possibly could, and finally got to the point where I thought the majority of people were okay with that, and we got to the point where we need to start talking to some of those folks. This August 11th primary is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So we started knocking on doors. We did it a little different than I have in the past. I used to knock on the door and then stay real tight to the door and hand out my palm card. And I'd try to stay close so that when the people open it up, their air conditioning wouldn't escape. Well, now I take a huge step back, or if they have
Throw
steps
rocks
going,
at the door.
yeah,
Yep.
no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
If that happened to your house, it wasn't me. But I take a big step back and I hold the palm card way out in my arm. If they have a step, I take one whole step down. And what I find is people generally are okay with you coming. They will reach way out to grab your palm card, and they're more comfortable being 6 to 10 feet away from you, and we can have a conversation. I get in neighborhoods where there's more folks, maybe over the age of 60. A lot of times they'll stick their hand out through their glass storm door, grab the palm card, and then they'll shut the door, and we'll have a conversation through the storm door,
Sure.
which is great.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Sure.
I've only had just a handful of people saying, you know what, I'm at risk, and so I'm not going to open this door, but I appreciate you coming by. Could you please leave your information on the stoop there, and I'll pick it up later.
Sure.
That happens, and we've had a couple people that were very happy that we were there, but we're approaching the 7,000 door mark now in my campaign, and less than 100 people have been upset that we're there. So at some point you just have to do that. And talking about the mental health aspect, we went up to Grantsburg a couple weeks ago, and we had been in Hudson prior to that. So I said, well, it's a little more rural. There's probably a few more elderly folks out here in the country. And I had my daughter and one of her friends with me, and I just told them, be a little bit more conscious of, they're a little older up here, and some of these houses, the folks are going to be a little more elderly, and I'm not sure how the COVID's going to, it's significantly different than Hudson. Knocked on my first door, big porch, knocked on the door. This lady that I'm going to guess is, and I shouldn't guess, but I'm going to guess she's about 80 and about 5 foot nothing, comes out and gives me a hug. And I'm like, oh, I'm Rob Stafsholt. I'm running for Senate, just like that. She goes, I'm just so happy you're here. I haven't seen anybody but my granddaughter in 2 months.
Oh, right.
They said the granddaughter brings groceries, sets them on the porch, and then leaves because she doesn't want to interact. And she was just happy I was there. And so I left that thinking about not anything about campaigning, but think about that gal sitting in that house in rural Grantsburg for 2 months. And her granddaughter comes, and it's a family decision. I respect that. But the granddaughter comes, and she can't even interact or hug the granddaughter. She took me off guard, but it was one of the nicest hugs I've ever gotten in politics. So I'm glad I was there.
Oh, well, speaking of campaign stuff, it seemed I've seen a couple, three things on Facebook over the last week about signs. And it was funny when I was looking at this. My first thought is like, please, you moron, stop vandalizing signs because, one, people got to pay for that stuff, and two, if you don't like the candidate and you're vandalizing their sign, they're probably going to put it on social media, and they're going to, that's probably helping them actually because it's going to be more sympathetic. I'm just saying. But my question really is more about it seems as though this is I think we're in year 5 now, 4 or 5, a couple election cycles in. It seems like it's inevitable that, and I don't know why it seems to be almost more primaries, but sometimes general election, signs always end up being a thing. Whether it's you put them up too soon or someone took it down or what? Signs, man. What is going on with signs?
They are a pain, Ben. I hate the whole sign. It ends up being this whole weird sign war and who puts your sign in their yard and other people are mad and then they put your opponents in their yard and you're thinking, well, geez, I thought we were good. And it's just the whole sign war ends up being a huge waste of time. I mean, it does build some name ID, but you're right. Every candidate, and I don't care what side of the aisle they're on, primary opponent, my primary opponent, not, Patty Shockner, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, we all and our teams work hard to raise funds to buy or make those signs. And then we work probably harder to find volunteers to help us go put them out. And then somebody comes and does that, and it's just disheartening. I mean, I've had signs that got knocked down. I've had signs that have disappeared. 4x8 sheet of plywood. If you, mine are bright red, so I can't imagine that's super easy to hide. But they're going down the road with a piece of plywood in the back of the truck. My primary opponent, somebody spray painted on hers last week. So it's just a pain, and unfortunately, it's just hard to watch because all of us spend a bunch of time and effort trying to fundraise to buy those and get them up.
My brother ran for mayor. He lost. It was his first time running for anything in Shell Lake earlier this year, and he had decided, I'm not getting any signs, I'm not putting them up because I don't want anyone to feel as though that this is let's say somebody decides, I like Matt, I want to vote for you, but I like our current mayor too, but yeah, I guess I will vote for Matt. But if you put it in, doesn't want any retribution, not that the current mayor would actually do that. I'm saying Matt just wanted to avoid it completely. He said that I don't want to get into this sign thing because I see this all the time is freaking signs. What's everybody's problem? Right. So he didn't. But then again, he lost the election, so maybe he should have.
Interesting fact behind the scenes, Joe Hendrick was a former state rep, and people were after him about his signs, and he said, I'm going to run a whole election with no signs and prove to you that they don't matter, and he did, and he won.
Good for him. I went onto your website again, and I know we're up against the clock here, but I want to get to a couple more things. I went and I looked at your endorsements. Dude, you got some legit endorsements there. So do you find that it helps a lot? Or maybe does it hurt? Like, hey, I like you. I'm a Republican. I'm going to vote for a Republican. I'm going to vote for you, Rob. But boy, that one guy that's endorsing it, I didn't actually like him. So does it help? Does it hurt? What are your thoughts on endorsements?
I think all of the above. I think, and it depends on what you're doing. So if I was rerunning for my assembly seat again, to have some endorsements from far out, probably not that big a deal. Don't help. Hopefully I've established the relationships with those people that I need to establish to begin with. Where I think it helps it is in a situation where I'm expanding my geographic terrain. So I'm up in Siren, I'm in Webster, I'm down in River Falls where I haven't been before. If they don't know me and they don't know my opponent and they see that Governor Walker, who they know very well, and former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish have both endorsed me, it gives a little bit of ease to their mind of, well, I don't know anything about this guy. And I've had people say, well, if you're good enough for Walker, you're good enough for me. But on the same side, you get some folks that said, I was sick of Walker, and if he's with you, then, maybe I'm looking for something else either. So
Right.
you kind of try to manage that. But yeah, they help in some regards. They hurt a little bit here and there. Hopefully the help is better than the hurt. But I'm just blessed to have, like I say, Governor Walker, Rebecca Clayfish, former state reps, Severson, Pettis, Jarko, current state rep Romaine Quinn. Those are the kind of people that were getting things done when they're there. I like to align myself with that kind of mentality of getting things done for our local people. And for those folks to put their name out on the line and do that for me, I really appreciate it, because they don't have to.
So, last question here that I had written down was, it's a primary, so you have two Republicans. So if the average Republican is, let's just assume, going to be voting for a Republican, well, there's two of them, you and your opponent, in the primary in August. If you both kind of have, maybe philosophically are kind of on the same way, I mean, you're both Republicans, how do you separate yourself when I'm sure you get the question, yes, I'm going to vote for a Republican in August, why should I vote for you over your opponent? What do you tell them?
So I won't rip on my opponent or talk negatively about my opponent, but I just go on my track record.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 terms in the state assembly. You can go right on the state website and look at the bills I've authored, the things I've got passed, the things I've gotten signed into law by the governors, and I just go on my proven conservative track record, and that's what I hope people look at.
What's your plan the rest of the day today? How about this week? It's Monday, so what do you have going on today and this week?
Actually, today's a little unique. We talked about Governor Walker. He's actually up in the district doing an event for me tonight at former state rep Eric Severson's house. So we're really excited to have him here. My team is kind of bustling. You see me looking to my left once in a while. They're busy hauling stuff in out the door, trying to get ready, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not staring at them and I'm staring at you. But that's what we got going on today. If we get a little time this afternoon before the event, we're going to knock on doors, and that's kind of what we're going to do the rest of the week here. And then next week, I've got former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish coming up to Hudson for me next week too.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to talk about or touch on that we didn't get a chance to?
We could talk all day, Ben, about the niceties in Spooner, Wisconsin, and good quality cigars and things of that nature. But for now, I think that's all we have.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, man.
I appreciate it. Have me on anytime.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Rob Stafsholt. Rob, thanks for being here. Wish you and your family, of course, all the best, and good luck in the election in August. Wisconsin's 29th Assembly District Representative and 10th Senate District candidate Rob Stafsholt was our guest today. Thank him and thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, keep your social distance, and have a blessed day.